The biting winds of Christmas week, usually softened by the pervasive good cheer of the season, seemed this year to contend with an unusually persistent gloom over London. A heavy, lowering sky pressed down upon the city, and a thin, crystalline frost clung tenaciously to the bare branches of the trees in Baker Street, sparkling under the gas lamps like a million shattered diamonds. Within the snug confines of our sitting-room, however, a roaring fire wrestled valiantly with the encroaching chill, casting dancing shadows upon the familiar clutter of Holmes's various scientific instruments and the towering stacks of monographs that habitually adorned every surface. I, Dr. John Watson, found myself brooding over a rather dry monograph on the advancements in surgical antiseptics, yet my attention was perpetually drawn to the figure opposite me, whose very presence seemed to hold the raw cold at bay. Sherlock Holmes, draped in his familiar dressing gown, sat like a sphinx, his long, lean figure silhouetted against the firelight. A sheaf of newspaper cuttings lay scattered about him, though his keen eyes, fixed upon the eddying patterns of smoke rising from his ubiquitous pipe, suggested his thoughts ranged far beyond the mundane reports of parliamentary wrangling and foreign skirmishes. A faint, acrid odour, emanating from a small retort, bubbling gently over the coals, testified to some recondite chemical experiment, a pursuit as stimulating to his intellect as any intricate problem of crime. "Watson," he observed, without so much as glancing my way, his voice a low, resonant murmur that contrasted sharply with the mournful creak of the floorboards. "Your very posture, my dear fellow, speaks volumes. You anticipate, with a certain wistful resignation, a period of professional stagnation. The festive season, you believe, has temporarily lulled the criminal element into a state of slumber, leaving the instruments of deduction to rust in their scabbards." I confess a slight start ran through me. "You are quite right, Holmes. This lingering Christmas, it seems, promises little in the way of intellectual stimulation. One might almost wish for a diversion, however grim, to stir the stagnant waters of routine." He chuckled, a dry, rustling sound that seemed to emanate from the very depths of his being. "Be careful what you wish for, Watson. For the very moment one pronounces the world bereft of interesting phenomena, fate, with its peculiar sense of dramatic irony, is apt to present one with a tableau of the most singular and perplexing nature. Indeed, the human heart, my dear fellow, is never truly dormant, not even during the season of supposed goodwill. Its currents of malice, avarice, and desperation flow ceaselessly, awaiting only the opportune moment to surface, and sometimes even the most innocent of traditions can serve as a canvas for the most heinous of human deeds." As if on cue, a furious pounding erupted upon our street door, startling Mrs. Hudson, whose hurried footsteps soon announced an unexpected visitor. A moment later, Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard, his usually rubicund face now pale and drawn, his customary bowler hat clutched in a visibly trembling hand, burst into the room. His heavy winter coat was beaded with the icy sleet, and his breath plumed visibly in the warmth of our fire. "Holmes! Watson! Thank heavens you're at home!" he gasped, clearly distraught. "A dreadful business, unspeakable, on Twelfth Night itself. I need your assistance, Holmes, immediately. The whole force is at a loss, and the public will be clamouring." Holmes, his languid air instantly replaced by an electric keenness, rose from his chair, his eyes now blazing with a peculiar light. "Pray, compose yourself, Inspector. Such breathless pronouncements, while undoubtedly testifying to the urgency of the matter, do little to illuminate its particulars. Be seated and relate, with the utmost precision, the events that have so clearly shattered your customary composure. Lestrade, still visibly agitated, sank into the proffered armchair, running a hand through his sparse hair. "It's Lord Blackwood, Holmes, Lord Alistair Blackwood, of Blackwood Manor, near Guildford. You know him, of course, a man of immense wealth, ancient lineage, and a temper like a rabid dog. Famous for disinheriting relatives on a whim, changing his will more often than he changed his socks by all accounts. Well, he's dead, Holmes. Died this evening, at his own 12th night party, right in front of a dozen guests." I felt a cold prickle of apprehension. Lord Blackwood. The name was indeed familiar, synonymous with eccentricity, immense wealth, and a certain ruthless caprice. To die so suddenly, so publicly, at his own traditional Christmas-ending celebration, it was indeed a case for Holmes. "Dead, you say, Inspector?" Holmes murmured, his gaze now fixed intently upon Lestrade, taking in every nuance of his distress. "And the cause of this most untimely and public demise? Did his legendary temper finally turn inwards, or did one of his disinherited relatives perhaps offer a more emphatic form of displeasure?" Lestrade gave a desperate shake of his head. "Poison, Holmes. Cyanide poisoning by the looks of it. Dr. Abernathy, the local physician, was attending the party and confirmed it. He collapsed, convulsing, just moments after taking the first bite of the traditional 12th night cake. The highlight of the evening, Holmes, the ceremonial cutting, and then death." The words hung in the air, creating a macabre counterpoint to the quiet solitude of our room. A poisoned cake, a sudden death, and a room full of potential heirs. This was indeed a case for Holmes, one that promised to delve into the very depths of aristocratic intrigue and family malice. "Cyanide poisoning, you say, Inspector?" Holmes repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "Administered via the ceremonial 12th night cake. A rather audacious method, fraught with peril for the perpetrator, yet possessing a certain theatrical flair. Watson, fetch my outdoor things. It appears that the sacred precincts of Blackwood Manor on this most solemn of nights have been defiled by a most diabolical act. The 12th night festivities, my dear fellow, have taken a decidedly grim turn." The cab ride to Blackwood Manor, a vast estate nestled deep in the Surrey countryside, was a journey through a London hushed by the late hour and the grim news that had already begun to circulate. The grand thoroughfares, usually bustling with carriages, now lay largely deserted, their surfaces glistening with the icy sleet. The majestic facade of the manor, a sprawling edifice of ancient stone, now appeared rather sombre, its gas lamps casting a subdued glow upon the arriving police carriages and the solemn faces of the uniformed constables guarding every entrance. We were admitted by a flustered footman, his face pale with shock, and ushered directly into the main dining hall. The atmosphere was a palpable blend of chaos and hushed grief. Guests, still in their elaborate evening wear, huddled together in small groups, their faces a mixture of bewilderment and profound sadness. The lingering scent of rich food, fine wine, and festive decorations now held a chilling new element, the subtle, acrid tang of cyanide. The scene of the tragedy, the enormous dining table, was a breathtaking tableau of aristocratic opulence. White linen tablecloths, gleaming silver, sparkling crystal, and elaborate floral arrangements adorned its considerable length. In the centre, surrounded by the remnants of the festive feast, stood the colossal 12th night cake, a confection of white icing, spun sugar, and marzipan fruits, its grand proportions a testament to the occasion. A dark, ominous stain marred the pristine white of the tablecloth at the head of the table, marking the spot where Lord Blackwood had fallen. His body had already been removed. Dr. Abernathy, the local physician, a portly man with a neatly trimmed beard, was already present, meticulously examining the table setting. Lestrade, his face grim, gestured helplessly towards the scene. The scene, Holmes, as you see, is most unsettling. The body has been removed, of course, but the cake, the fatal slice, has been secured. It was taken from his plate just after he collapsed, and the doctor here confirmed it was cyanide. Rapid onset, violent convulsions. Holmes merely offered a terse nod, his eyes already sweeping the room, taking in every detail with an almost predatory intensity. He ignored Dr. Abernathy's pronouncements for a moment, his gaze fixed on the grim tableau before him. He first directed his attention to the cake. The massive confection, untouched, save for a single gaping wedge removed from its side, stood like a silent, sugary monument to murder. "The cake, Inspector," Holmes observed, his voice low and calm. "Presumably it contained the fatal draught. Has it been analysed for traces of the poison?" Lestrade nodded. "Indeed, Holmes. Dr. Abernathy's initial tests confirmed traces of cyanide on the remainder of the slice Lord Blackwood consumed. But here's the rub, Holmes. The rest of the cake, the entire remaining portion, has been tested. It's completely harmless, utterly free of poison. How could only one slice be poisoned when it was all from the same cake?" Holmes, however, merely hummed, a peculiar, almost knowing sound. He took the cake knife, a heavy silver implement, from where it lay on a sterile cloth, handling it with extreme care. He examined its blade, its handle, its very texture. He then produced a small silk handkerchief and, with a delicate touch, wiped the blade. He then held the handkerchief to his nose, sniffing intently. "Remarkable," Holmes murmured, his eyes narrowing. "Most remarkable. Watson, come here and tell me what you perceive as the predominant odour from this handkerchief." I leaned closer, sniffing intently. The scent was faint, almost imperceptible beneath the pervasive odour of rich cream and sugar, but it was distinct, the characteristic bitter almond aroma of cyanide. But something else was present, or rather absent. "The cyanide is present, Holmes," I confirmed. "But it's remarkably faint, and the knife itself, it seems, unusually clean. Almost as if it has been wiped thoroughly, despite having cut a poisoned slice." "Precisely, my dear Watson. Your olfactory senses, though not as highly cultivated as my own, are quite accurate in this instance. The cyanide, while present, is not present in the concentration one would expect from a blade that cut through a poisoned cake. And the knife, as you observe, is indeed surprisingly clean. Too clean, I dare say, for an instrument that supposedly sliced through a portion teeming with a lethal dose of liquid poison. It suggests rather a residue of poison, applied and then largely removed or transferred. The cake knife, Lestrade, may be our red herring. The poison, I believe, was not delivered within the cake itself, but elsewhere. And the act of cutting the cake was merely a piece of misdirection, a perfectly timed illusion to conceal the true means of death. Lestrade stared, his face a mask of profound bewilderment. "A red herring, Holmes? But the man ate the cake, we all saw him, and the poison was in his slice." "Indeed, Inspector, the eye can be a most fallible witness, particularly when subjected to the deceptive arts of misdirection. The point of administration, I dare say, lies elsewhere. Now tell me, Inspector, what was the precise custom surrounding the cutting of this Twelfth Night cake? Was there any specific ritual, any peculiar habit of Lord Blackwood that might shed light on this singular poisoning?" Lestrade consulted his notes, acquired from the bewildered butler. "Well, Holmes, there was a peculiar superstition, or rather a lifelong habit, of Lord Blackwood. He always insisted on receiving the slice of cake that contained the marzipan cherry on top. It was his good luck charm, he called it. He would fly into a terrible rage if anyone else received it, or if his slice didn't have one." Holmes's eyes, which had been sweeping the table, now narrowed, fixing upon the empty space where Lord Blackwood's slice had rested. He then directed his gaze to the remaining cake. Its surface was adorned with several small, perfectly formed marzipan cherries, each a vibrant crimson. He then scanned the table setting where Lord Blackwood had sat. The plate, now empty, had been removed, but the cutlery remained. He picked up a small silver dessert fork, examining its tines. He brought it to his nose. "Aha, Watson," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, a flicker of profound satisfaction in his keen eyes. "And here, my dear fellow, is our second true whisper from the impossible." He carefully applied a few drops of a reagent from his kit to the tines of the fork. The clear liquid, to my astonishment, almost instantly turned a distinct, deep blue. And the scent, unmistakable now, of bitter almonds, emanated strongly from the small implement. "Remarkable," Holmes murmured. "Most remarkable. Watson, this colour change indicates the definite presence of a potent cyanide residue upon this fork, and the scent distinct and powerful. The knife, Inspector, was clean, but the fork, the implement with which Lord Blackwood ate his first fatal mouthful, is undeniably contaminated. The poisoning, Lestrade, was not in the cake. It was in the cherry, the marzipan cherry, the one item Lord Blackwood, with his singular superstition, would always demand and consume with his very first bite." He then straightened up, his gaze sweeping the room. "Now, Inspector, I wish to speak to the cook, the butler, and the 3 nephews who were present at the cutting of the cake. And I wish to ascertain their exact positions at the table, their relationships to Lord Blackwood, and any specific knowledge they might possess concerning his peculiar dietary habits and superstitions." Our subsequent investigation within the grand, yet now chillingly silent dining hall began to yield further threads in the intricate tapestry Holmes was weaving. Lestrade, though initially incredulous, was compelled by Holmes's unassailable logic. The police confirmed Lord Blackwood's idiosyncratic superstition regarding the marzipan cherry. Indeed, the servants attested that great care was always taken to ensure his slice, and his alone, contained the crimson confection. We interviewed the cook, Mrs. Higgins, a plump woman with flour on her apron and an air of professional indignation. She steadfastly maintained the cake was baked to perfection, using the finest ingredients, and was entirely harmless. She had followed the recipe exactly and had placed the marzipan cherries on the cake before it was iced, a day before the party, a common practice to ensure they adhered properly. Mr. Davies, the butler, a tall, gaunt man with an air of discreet efficiency, confirmed that he had personally served Lord Blackwood his slice, ensuring it contained the coveted cherry. He had then offered slices to the other guests, all of whom had partaken without ill effect. He stressed the strict protocols of the pantry and kitchen, insisting no one could have tampered with the cake after it left Mrs. Higgins's care. Then came the three nephews, Mr. Arthur Blackwood, a bluff, hearty man with a perpetual air of disappointment; Mr. Bertram Blackwood, a younger, more effeminate man with a nervous tic; and Mr. Charles Blackwood, a man of sharp, intelligent features, dressed in immaculate evening wear, whose composure seemed almost unnaturally unruffled. Each, in their own way, had a profound financial interest in Lord Blackwood's estate, and each had, at various times, fallen afoul of their uncle's capricious will, being alternately included or disinherited. All three had watched the cake-cutting, their eyes, according to the other guests, fixed intently upon the ceremony. Arthur expressed profound grief, mixed with an undertone of weary resignation. Bertram stammered his shock, nervously clutching a small silver snuff-box. Charles, however, maintained a cool, analytical demeanour, expressing bewilderment at the apparent impossibility of the crime. Holmes observed them all keenly, noting their reactions, their subtle gestures, their individual relationships to the deceased. He paid particular attention to Charles's hands, which, though impeccably manicured, possessed a certain firmness, a precision that hinted at a deeper, more practical engagement with the world than his elegant attire suggested. Back in our cab, heading towards Baker Street, I could not contain my growing excitement, mixed with a profound sense of horror. Holmes, the cyanide on the fork, the harmless cake, the cherry superstition, it all points to one of the nephews, does it not? One of them knew his uncle's habits and poisoned only the cherry. Holmes nodded, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the intellectual chase. Precisely, Watson. The evidence forms an unassailable logical chain. Lord Blackwood's superstition, so well known, was not a mere eccentricity. It was the Achilles heel through which his demise was ingeniously orchestrated. The cake itself was a red herring, a colossal innocent confection designed to draw attention away from the true minuscule delivery system. But how, Holmes? How could one poison only the cherry on a cake that was baked and decorated days before the party and under the watchful eye of the cook and butler, and with liquid cyanide at that, which would surely spoil the marzipan or leak into the cake itself? Holmes leaned back, a grim look on his face. "Ah, Watson, the plot thickens, does it not? The method of administration, I dare say, is as ingenious as the motive is ancient. My discreet inquiries, conducted during our brief return to the dining hall, into the precise methods of cake decoration and the storage of such confections, have yielded a most illuminating picture. Mrs. Higgins, the cook, stores her finished Twelfth Night cake in a locked pantry, kept cool and dry for several days before the ceremony. The marzipan cherries, she confirmed, are indeed placed upon the cake before the final icing is applied, making them an integral, immovable part of the decoration. This eliminates any possibility of last-minute tampering at the table or by the butler during serving. But it does not eliminate the possibility of tampering before the party itself. Specifically, several days prior, Consider the nature of liquid cyanide, Watson. A minute quantity delivered with precision would be rapidly absorbed. And consider the medium, a marzipan cherry. Sugar-based, pliable, yet firm enough to hold its shape. A small, fine needle, Watson, injected with surgical precision into the heart of the cherry days before the event, when the cake was sitting in the cool, dark pantry. A single, lethal drop. The marzipan would seal the tiny puncture, the cold would slow any diffusion, and the sugar would mask any faint taste of the toxin. The poison would lie dormant, waiting for its ultimate victim. And the murderer, Holmes? Which of the nephews possessed such cunning, such cold-blooded precision, and such intimate knowledge of their uncle's habits and the very intricacies of the domestic arrangements? Holmes paused, puffing thoughtfully on his pipe, a plume of smoke obscuring his features for a moment. The motive, Watson, is as clear as it is ancient. Avarice, compounded by a desperate need for financial security. Lord Blackwood, with his capricious will, held his nephews in a perpetual state of anxiety. One of them, I dare say, decided to force his hand permanently. And the precise method points to a particular mind. A mind capable of meticulous planning, scientific application, and a certain ruthless flair for the dramatic. A mind, I dare say, not entirely unfamiliar with the intricacies of domestic arrangements, and perhaps with a subtle knowledge of poisons. He then leaned forward, his eyes fixed upon me. Our task now, Watson, is to confront Mr. Charles Blackwood. For of the three nephews, he alone possesses the intellectual capacity for such a scheme, the cool composure to execute it, and the subtle scientific inclination for such a method. I recall, upon meeting him, a certain precision in his hand gestures, a flicker of acute observation in his eyes. Furthermore, my discreet inquiries have revealed his considerable debt and his profound resentment at being repeatedly disinherited by his uncle's whimsical changes of will. He knew his uncle's superstition. He knew the cake was stored in the pantry. He knew the vulnerability of the marzipan cherry. He is the one, Watson, the nutcracker prince indeed, who turned a festive symbol into a vessel of death. Once back at Baker Street, Holmes immediately retired to his laboratory. The pungent odours of his chemical experiments soon wafted through the rooms as he set about confirming his preliminary analysis of the cyanide residue on the fork, and indeed confirming the absence of poison in the surrounding cake. He even prepared a miniature marzipan cherry, which he carefully injected with a minuscule amount of a harmless coloured dye, demonstrating the precise method of delivery. I knew better than to disturb him during these periods of intense intellectual activity. Finally, after a considerable interval, Holmes emerged, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He held a small, stoppered vial containing the residual cyanide from the fork, and the dye-injected marzipan cherry. "Watson," he announced, his voice ringing with quiet triumph. "The science, my dear fellow, speaks with unequivocal clarity. The fork bears the unmistakable signature of cyanide. The cake as a whole is harmless. But the marzipan cherry, as I have demonstrated, is capable of being singled out for the delivery of a potent toxin, unnoticed until the moment of consumption. The murder weapon, Watson, was not the cake, but the cherry itself, meticulously prepared and targeted with deadly precision for its specific victim. He then carefully placed the evidence, the poisoned fork, the dye-injected cherry and his meticulous notes, into a large dossier. Lestrade, I believe, will be most eager to receive this information. I have already dispatched a coded telegram instructing him to bring Mr. Charles Blackwood directly to our rooms for a rather less pleasant 12th night celebration. The cab, having traversed the damp and fog-shrouded streets, deposited us back on Baker Street. Inspector Lestrade, his usual gruff demeanour now replaced by a profound solemnity, accompanied us, a rather pale and agitated Mr. Charles Blackwood in tow. Blackwood, usually so composed, now sat stiffly on our sofa, radiating an aura of barely suppressed apprehension. His sharp, intelligent eyes darted nervously about the room. Holmes stood before Blackwood, his long, lean figure radiating an almost palpable authority. His voice, clear and resonant, filled the small sitting room. "Mr. Blackwood," he began, his tone surprisingly devoid of his usual sardonic edge, but steeped in an undeniable authority. "We have, I believe, unravelled the true tragic fate of your uncle, Lord Alistair Blackwood. He did not die of a simple poisoned cake, a random act of malice. He was murdered, Mr. Blackwood, by your own hand. And the instrument of death was not the great 12th night cake itself, but the humble marzipan cherry that adorned his specific slice." Charles Blackwood's face, which had been pale, now flushed a deep, unhealthy crimson. "Murder? This is outrageous, Mr. Holmes, a baseless accusation. My uncle died of poison in his cake. Everyone knows that. The cake was tested." His voice, though cultured, cracked with a desperate tremor. "On the contrary, Mr. Blackwood," Holmes retorted, his voice hardening. "The evidence speaks not of a poisoned cake, but of cold-blooded, meticulously planned murder. The cake, as a whole, was indeed harmless, but the small silver dessert fork found at your uncle's place setting bears the unmistakable signature of liquid cyanide. And that cyanide, Mr. Blackwood, was delivered not through the cake, but through the marzipan cherry atop your uncle's slice. The one item, as you well knew, he would always demand and consume first, due to his lifelong superstition." Blackwood swallowed hard, his eyes darting towards Lestrade, then back to Holmes, a flicker of desperation in their depths. "Furthermore, Mr. Blackwood," Holmes pressed on, his voice gaining a quiet intensity, "your method, though ingenious, betrayed the hand of a precise, calculating mind. Days before the party, you gained access to the cake in the locked pantry. With a fine needle and a minute quantity of liquid cyanide, you injected the poison directly into the heart of that specific marzipan cherry, knowing the sugar would mask its taste and the cold would prevent premature diffusion. You understood the nuances of your uncle's superstition and leveraged it for your own nefarious ends. The entire cake, a monumental confection, served as a mere red herring, a colossal piece of misdirection designed to obscure the true, tiny instrument of your revenge." Blackwood swayed, his face a mask of utter defeat. The meticulous logic of Holmes's deductions had shattered his carefully constructed facade. His breath came in ragged gasps, and he finally collapsed into a chair, his head buried in his hands, his earlier protestations dissolving into choked sobs. "He deserved it," Blackwood choked out, his voice muffled by his hands. "He toyed with us, his whimsical will, his endless threats of disinheritance. I was ruined. My debts were astronomical. He held my very future in his cruel hands. I merely secured what was rightfully mine and put an end to his sadistic games." Lestrade, his face a mask of grim satisfaction, stepped forward, his hand resting on his revolver. "Mr. Charles Blackwood, you are under arrest for the murder of Lord Alistair Blackwood." It was well past midnight when Holmes and I at last found ourselves back in the familiar sanctuary of Baker Street. The city had finally fallen silent, a profound peace settling over London, now truly quiet save for the distant chiming of a church clock. The fire in our grate burned brightly, casting a warm, comforting glow upon the room. I poured myself a final glass of claret, the grim details of the case still swirling in my mind. "A truly diabolical scheme, Holmes," I remarked, shaking my head. "To twist the very spirit of Christmas, the innocent tradition of the 12th night cake, into such an instrument of death, and to execute it with such cold, calculating precision, hiding the true murder in plain sight of a dozen witnesses, all eager for a taste of the confection." Holmes, pipe in mouth, merely nodded, watching the wreaths of smoke ascend towards the ceiling. "Indeed, Watson, it merely illustrates the truth that the most cunning crimes are often those that employ the most commonplace implements and the most natural human settings, particularly when cloaked in the unexpected. Charles Blackwood, the ambitious nephew, leveraged his intimate knowledge of his uncle's habits, of the household routines, and of the delicate art of confectionery to execute a murder that, to the uncritical eye, seemed like an inexplicable anomaly. He believed the harmlessness of the cake would protect him, that the poison would be deemed to have vanished into the great confection itself. He paused, then picked up a well-worn volume of poisons and toxicology from his desk. "But logic, my dear fellow, is a more powerful force than any culinary deception. And human ingenuity, whether applied to deception or detection, remains a potent and often terrifying force. The Adventure of the 12th Night Cake, as you might title it, was a testament to the fact that even the most elaborate of deceptions can be unravelled by the careful observation of seemingly insignificant details: a clean knife, a poisoned fork, a specific superstition, and the desperate avarice of a nephew. And it proves once again, my dear Watson, that the intricate workings of the human heart, with its passions and its betrayals, are far more complex and perilous than any chemical compound or grand festive tradition. Now, Watson, if you would be so kind as to pass me that volume on the effects of various sugar compounds on the diffusion of liquids, I believe there are a few lingering points concerning the precise capillary action within marzipan that I should like to explore before dawn. For even on 12th night, the pursuit of knowledge admits of no true rest.